Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, April 10th, 2025. And we have a whopper doozy today in today's news and views. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Please remember that we do have a vid chat tomorrow afternoon. For once, we have no bad weather heading our way for the weekend cycle, so we are going to be going ahead with the vid chat. I do want to alert you, I have been having a really horrific back pain the last few days. So if you either on today's news and views suddenly hear me wince or actually cry out in pain, it's because of a very bad back. I am going to go ahead with the vid chat tomorrow afternoon, but I just want to let you know it's nothing I'm not taking back pain pills for. So hopefully it'll be down or mitigated somewhat by tomorrow afternoon. So that will be at 2 p.m. Don't forget to get your questions and comments in no later than 10 p.m. tonight, U.S. Central Time. Now, let's get to this article. This article was sent by VT, one of our regular contributors here, and it's so vital that I might be not only doing this news and views about it, I might be doing a written blog about it. And in addition to that, I might even do it as a tidbit honorable mention, just to make sure that all of you out there are aware of this story. I find it personally not surprising, but at the same time, I find it very bad news for the future. And here's the title. The article's author are Nathan Sanders and Bruce Schneier. It was uploaded apparently in January of this year. The article is titled AI, Artificial Intelligence, Will Write Complex Laws. And I'm going to read just a few paragraphs from this article. I will link it for you so that you can read it yourself. It's quite lengthy, but it is very important. The opening paragraphs from this article state this, quote, "Artificial intelligence is writing law today. This has required no changes in legislative procedure or the rules of legislative bodies. All it takes is one legislator or legislative assistant to use generative artificial intelligence in the process of drafting a bill. In fact, the use of artificial intelligence by legislators is only likely to become more prevalent. There are currently projects in the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate, and legislatures around the world to trial the use of artificial intelligence in various ways. Searching databases, drafting text, summarizing meetings, performing policy research and analysis, and more. A Brazilian municipality passed the first known artificial intelligence written law in 2023. Legislators are increasingly writing long, intricate, and complicated laws that a human legislative drafters have trouble producing. Already in the United States, the multi-billion-dollar lobbying industry is subsidizing lawmakers in writing baroque laws, suggesting paragraphs to add to bills specifying benefits for some, carving out exceptions for others. Indeed, the lobbying industry is growing in complexity and influence worldwide." Now stop and consider that. If you can program an artificial intelligence with certain parameters, create these exceptions for those types of interests, and create these subsidies or whatever, or these types of regulatory policies or laws for those types of people, and you have a real mess. Because remember, the intelligence, the artificial intelligence, is programmed. So in other words, you're putting yourself at the mercy, again, of technocrats. Now, we're going to later in this article hear all of the reasons that the authors are advancing. All of this is just perfectly wonderful, okay? But I want you to listen to the buildup for why this is happening. And this again is from the article. Quote, in looking at bills enacted between 1993 and 2014, the researchers found two things. First, they concluded that ideological polarization drives complexity. The suggestion is that if a legislator is on the extreme end of the ideological spectrum, they're more likely to introduce a complex law that constrains the discretion of, as the authors put it, entrenched bureaucratic interests. And second, they found that divided government drives complexity to a large degree. Significant legislation passed under divided government was found to be 65% more complex than similar legislation passed under unified government. Their conclusion is that if a legislator's party controls Congress and the opposing party controls the White House, the legislator will want to give the executive as little wiggle room as possible. When legislators' preferences disagree with the executive's, the legislature is incentivized to write laws that specify all the details. This gives the agency designated to implement the law as little discretion as possible. Because polarization and divided government are increasingly entrenched in the United States, the demand for complex legislation at the federal level is likely to grow. Now, I'm skipping the rest of that paragraph to these two important paragraphs. Quote, another related factor driving the complexity of legislation is the need to do it all at once. The lobbyist Frieden-Fensy, spurring major bills like the Affordable Care Act to be thousands of pages in length, and neither affordable nor really care, by the way, is driven in part by gridlock in Congress. Congressional productivity has dropped so low. Let me repeat that sentence, folks. Congressional productivity has dropped so low that bills on any given policy issue seem like a once-in-a-generation opportunity for legislators and lobbyists to set policy. These dynamics also impact the states. States often have divided governments, albeit less often than they used to, and their demand for drafting assistance is arguably higher due to their significantly smaller staffs. And since the productivity of Congress has cratered in recent years, significantly more policy making is happening at the state level. So in other words, Congress shirking its legislative responsibility to lobbyists creating ever more complex laws is now driving the push for artificial intelligence to actually draft the law. Okay? This in a Congress, let's remember, that Nancy Pelosi told us, well, we need to pass the Affordable Care Act to find out what's in it because we don't know. Okay? And that's going to bring me to my reductio ad absurdum argument in just a minute. Now, the rest of the article, interestingly enough, is, and not surprisingly, is full of all sorts of reasons why all of this is a good thing. And I just want to read these to you because it gives you the usual flavor that every technical advance is going to provide all these wonderful benefits to us, and therefore we should all get on the bandwagon right away and support this stuff. So here's what the article says about why we should do that. Quote, two particular artificial intelligence capabilities enable Congress to write laws differently from laws humans tend to write. One, artificial intelligence models have an enormous scope of expertise. Really? Really? Whereas people have only a handful of specializations. Large language models like the one powering ChatGPT can generate legislative text on funding, specialty crop harvesting, and mechanization equally as well as material on energy efficiency standards for street lighting. This enables a legislator to address more topics simultaneously. 2, artificial intelligence models have the sophistication to work with a higher degree of complexity than people can. Really? Is more data really more complexity? Modern large language models systems can instantaneously perform several simultaneous multi-step reasoning tasks using information from thousands of pages of documents. This enables a legislator to fill in more baroque detail on any given topic. In other words, what they just told you folks is if you think you're buried now under a mountain of regulatory detail that's been piled on top of legislative detail, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because if you're going to have artificial intelligence helping to write your laws, you're also going to have it helping to write the regulatory policy based on those laws, right? Let's continue. Artificial intelligence can be used in each step of lawmaking. There you go. And this will bring various benefits to policymakers. Notice there's not one mention of any sort of problem, of any sort of contraindication that this may not be such a good step. It's all beneficial. This will bring various benefits to policymakers. It could let them work on more policies. Oh, just what we need them to do. Create more laws and more regulations. More bills. And that's in the article, folks. More bills. At the same time, add more detail and specificity to each bill, or interpret and incorporate more feedback from constituents, and here comes, I love this one, and outside groups. Outside of what? The addition of a single artificial intelligence tool to a legislative office may have an impact similar to adding several people to their staff, but with far lower cost. Think Doja, folks. Speed sometimes matters when writing law. When there is a change of a governing party, there is often a rush to change as much policy as possible to match the platform of the new regime. Artificial intelligence could help legislators do that kind of wholesale revision. Artificial intelligence can also make laws clearer and more consistent. Really? Is the consistency of the machine something we really want in law? Because law deals with human relations. Let me repeat that. Is the consistency of the machine something we want in law? Because law deals with human relations. With their superhuman attention spans, artificial intelligence tools are good at enforcing syntactic and grammatical rules. They will be effective at drafting text in precise and proper legislative language or offering detailed feedback to human drafters. And just to round out this litany of all the wonderful benefits that this is going to produce, listen to this one. There's more that artificial intelligence can do in the legislative process. Artificial intelligence can summarize bills and answer questions about their provisions. In other words, we don't need to read the bill, we just read the summary. And by the way, that's more or less what's going on now. Now, I'm all in favor of whatever measure that we would have to pass to get Congress to actually write the legislation and then require them to actually read the legislation that they pass and not exempt themselves from the legislation. Okay? No more two-tiered healthcare system, Congress. But instead, what they are urging is that artificial intelligence can plug the problem that Congress has been doing very little legislating. In other words, Congress has not been doing its job for a long time. It can highlight aspects of a bill that align with or are contrary to different political points of view. Yeah, you bet it can. What you program in for the search engine and the database is what's going to pop out, folks. You're adding a layer of technocracy here to the legislative process that is not, I repeat, not part of the Constitution. We can even imagine a future in which artificial intelligence can be used to simulate a new law and determine whether or not it would be effective or what the side effects might be. This means that beyond writing them, artificial intelligence could help lawmakers understand laws. Congress is notorious for producing bills hundreds of pages long, and many other countries sometimes have similarly massive omnibus bills that address many issues at once. It's impossible for any one person to understand how each of these bills' provisions would work. So quit making that kind of legislation, rather than invite a new layer of complexification and unresponsiveness to the people on top of it. So that's it, folks. This is quite a long article, but here's where it's headed. And I think you all see the ne plus ultra, the reductio ad absurdum here. Because if you're going to have artificial intelligence drafting the law, why do you even need a Congress to vote on it? So why not fill up Congress with artificial intelligences that not only draft the law, but immediately are able to read and understand it and vote on it, and Congress will be in and out of session in less than 5 minutes. And of course, that will save us a lot of money. Why then do we need juries to determine the guilt or innocence of a person or the applicability of the law? And remember, that is within the power of every petite jury to nullify a law if they believe it has been unjustly applied in a particular case, even though legally it might be. So why do we even bother having people on petite juries when artificial intelligence could weigh so much more of the complexity of the evidence than mere people? So I think you know where I stand on this. This is a bad idea whose time is coming, of course, like most bad ideas do. But it only is a bad idea because it's highlighting the fact that our current legislative practice is wildly outside of the intentions of the framers of the Constitution. And notice, there was not one mention in this article, at least from what I read you, that there is any constitutional issue here at all. It's all just wonderful, and everything is going to provide more and more benefits, and we all need to get on the artificial intelligence bandwagon. Because if we don't do it, China will. And what a model of openness and representative democracy that country is, right? So that's it for my news and views from the Nefarium for today. And like I say, I may blog about this article, and I may even put it as a tidbit because I want to make sure that people are aware that this kind of talk is beginning to happen out there. Don't forget the vid chat tomorrow afternoon. I am suffering from a really bad back, so if you hear me wincing and so on tomorrow in the vid chat, you will understand that I'm in a lot of pain. I don't know what has happened, but I pulled a muscle or something in my lower back. But anyway, we'll see you on the flip side, everybody. Bye-bye, and God bless.